Look, I know I tell you to share when I read these letters by Heather Cox Richardson, but now is the time. If you have not MAGA Republican family members, because they can't have they can't be convinced. You know what I'm saying? But if you have moderate, normal Republicans who still have hope for the Republican Party, you need to let them know this information because it's fucking horrifying. A story in the New York Times today by Jonathan Swan, Charlie Savage, and Maggie Haberman outlined how former President Donald Trump and his allies are planning to create a dictatorship if voters return him to power in 2024. The article talks about how Trump and his loyalists plan to centralize more power in the Oval Office by increasing the president's authority over every part of the federal government that now operates, by either law or tradition, with any measure of independence from political interference by the White House. They plan to take control over independent government agencies and get rid of the nonpartisan civil service, purging all but Trump loyalists from the U.S. intelligence agencies, the State Department, and the Defense Department. They plan to start impounding funds, that is, ignoring programs Congress has funded if those programs aren't in line with Trump's policies. What we're trying to do is identify the pockets of independence and seize them, said Russell T. Vought, who ran Trump's Office of Management and Budget and who now advises the right-wing House Freedom Caucus. They envision a president who cannot be checked by the Congress or the courts. Trump's desire to grab the mechanics of our government and become a dictator is not new. Both scholars and journalists have called it out since the early years of his administration. What is new here is the willingness of so-called establishment Republicans to support this authoritarian power grab. Behind this initiative is Project 2025, a coalition of more than 65 right-wing organizations putting in place personnel and policies to recommend not just to Trump, but to any Republican who may win in 2024. Project 2025 is led by the Heritage Foundation, once considered a conservative think tank that helped to lead the Reagan Revolution. A piece by Alexander Bolton in The Hill today said that Republican senators are worried by the MAGAs, but they have been notably silent in public at a time when every elected leader should be speaking out against this plot. Their silence suggests they are on board with it, as Trump apparently hoped to establish. The party appears to have fully embraced the anti-democratic ideology advanced by authoritarian leaders like Russia's President Vladimir Putin and Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who argue that the post-World War II era in which democracy seemed to triumph is over. They claim that the tenets of democracy, equality before the law, free speech, academic freedom, a market-based economy, immigration, and so on, weaken a nation by destroying a traditional society based in patriarchy and Christianity. Instead of democracy, they have called for illiberal or Christian democracy, which uses the government to enforce their beliefs in a Christian patriarchal order. What that looks like has a clear blueprint in the actions of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who has gathered extraordinary power into his own hands in the state and used that power to mirror Orban's destruction of democracy. DeSantis has pushed through laws that ban abortion after 6 weeks, before most people even know they're pregnant, banned classroom instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity, the Don't Say Gay law, prevented recognition of transgender individuals, made it easier to sentence someone to death, allowed people to carry guns without training or permits, banned colleges and businesses from conversations about race, exerted control over state universities, made it harder for his opponents to vote, and tried to punish Disney World for speaking out against the Don't Say Gay law. After rounding up migrants and sending them to other states, DeSantis recently has called for using deadly force on migrants crossing unlawfully. Because all of the institutions of our democracy are designed to support the tenets of democracy, right-wingers claim those institutions are weaponized against them. House Republicans are running hearings designed to prove that the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice are both weaponized against Republicans. It doesn't matter that they don't seem to have any evidence of bias. The very fact that those institutions support democracy means that they support a system that right-wing Republicans see as hostile. Our current executive branch, Trump loyalist John McEntee, who is in charge of planning to pack the government with Trump loyalists, told the New York Times reporters, was conceived of by liberals for the purpose of promulgating liberal policies. There is no way to make the existing structure function in a conservative manner. It's not enough to get the personnel right. What's necessary is a complete system overhaul. It has taken decades for the modern-day Republican Party to get a place where it rejects democracy. The roots of that rejection lie all the way back in the 1930s, when Democrats under Franklin Delano Roosevelt embraced a government that regulated business, provided a basic social safety net, and promoted infrastructure. That system ushered in a period from 1933 to 1981 that economists call the Great Compression, when disparities of income and wealth were significantly reduced, especially after the government also began to protect civil rights. Members of both parties embraced this modern government in this period, and Americans still like what it accomplished. But businessmen who hated regulation joined with racists who hated federal protection of civil rights and traditionalists who opposed women's rights and set out to destroy that government. In West Palm Beach, Florida, last weekend at the Turning Points Action Conference, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene compared President Biden's Build Back Better plan to President Lyndon Baines Johnson's Great Society programs, which invested in education, medical care, urban problems, rural poverty, transportation, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps and welfare, the Office of Economic Opportunity, and big labor unions. She noted that under Biden, the U.S. has made the largest public investment in social infrastructure and environmental programs that is actually finishing what FDR started, that LBJ expanded on, and Joe Biden is attempting to complete. Well, yeah. Greene incorrectly called this program socialism, which in fact means government ownership of production, as opposed to the government's provision of benefits people cannot provide individually, a concept first put into practice in the United States by Abraham Lincoln and later expanded by leadership in both parties. The administration has stood firmly behind the idea, shared by LBJ and FDR, and also by Republicans Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, and Dwight Eisenhower, among others, that investing in programs that enable working people to prosper is the best way to strengthen the economy. Certainly, Greene's speech didn't seem to be the gotcha that she apparently hoped. A March 2023 poll by independent health policy pollster KFF, for example, found that 80% of Americans like Social Security, 81% like Medicare, and 76% like Medicaid, a large majority of members of all political parties. The White House Twitter account retweeted a clip of Greene's speech, writing, "Caught us. President Biden is working to make life easier for hardworking families." Seems so. Notes are below.